One February evening in 1996, the town of Hannibal, Missouri was shrouded in cold fog and neon lights spilling from the Riverview Lounge, where the wedding music had just faded, and a young woman stepped out, never to return. Marty Evans, 27 years old, a nurse, mother to a little boy, vanished along a stretch of road just a few miles long, but enough to erase every trace of her. The 1984 Ford Ranger she was driving left the party like it evaporated, leaving behind a silent riverbank and chilling rumors. Accident, runaway, or a criminal hand in the shadows. For weeks, police combed every bend of the river, every mudflat, finding only a stray shoe and faint tire tracks near Bear Creek Bridge. The case was shelved, the family's hope turning to despair. Months turned to years. The small town forgot the name Martha, and her file lay dormant in cold storage with the label unsolved. Then, nearly 30 years later, a young detective, Karen Holt, stumbled upon the dusty file folder. Inside, a blurry old sonar photo, a piece of gray car carpet, and a brief note, metal reflection under the riverbed. No further action. From that moment, the case that had slumbered for nearly 3 decades began to awaken. No one expected that beneath the flat calm of the Salt River lay a horrifying secret, and the truth, once unearthed, would shake the entire state of Missouri. A missing woman, a silent river, and a crime thought buried, all about to retell a story that time could not erase. Before diving into this shocking true story, let us know where you're watching from, and if you love journeys in search of forgotten justice, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next part. February 1996, the town of Hannibal, Missouri wore the peaceful look of every other winter. The small streets along the Mississippi River were blanketed in thick fog, golden lights spilling through the windows of old shops, and life unfolded slowly, repeating as it always did. But that night of the 10th of February, that tranquility was shattered by a disappearance no one saw coming. Marty Evans, 27 years old, single mother to a 6-year-old boy, was the last person anyone remembered seeing step out of the Riverview Lounge, a small event venue right on the riverbank, where she had just attended her best friend's wedding. She was known as a calm person, rarely leaving Hannibal, a hard-working woman living quietly after her divorce a few years earlier. That night, Marty wore a dark dress and a short leather jacket, simple attire but unusual for someone who rarely dressed up. The party stretched until nearly 10 o'clock, when the music began to fade and the last guest departed. Marty told a few people she needed to meet an acquaintance at Hannibal Walmart and then come back to help clean up. She left the venue in the 1984 Ford Ranger, borrowed from a friend in the group, driving toward the main road running along the riverbank. From there, no one saw her again. The next morning, as the first light filtered through the window frame, the small house on the outskirts where Marty and her son lived was unusually quiet. The hallway light was still on, the door unlocked, and the 6-year-old boy was still sleeping in his room, unaware that his mother hadn't come home all night. Her second jacket still hung on the chair back, half-eaten dinner sat in the kitchen, a cold coffee mug on the table. Her brother Andrew came to visit in the morning, and noticed the driveway was empty. The Ford Ranger was gone, Marty wasn't home, no note left behind. He called his other sister, Marty's friends, the store where she worked. No one answered, no one had seen her since the party night. As the clock ticked toward noon, worry turned to panic. Andrew and his sister Linda went to every gas station, asked passing drivers, hoping someone had spotted the distinctive silver truck with the 7-Up sticker. It was all in vain. That afternoon, the family officially contacted the Hannibal Police Department to report her missing. As soon as the missing person report was received, the Hannibal police immediately dispatched 2 patrol units to scour the shortest route from the Riverview Lounge to the residential area where Marty Evans lived. This route was just over 6 miles long, running along the Mississippi Riverbank, with small turnoffs leading into marshy areas and an old wooden bridge spanning Bear Creek. In the first report, the officers noted overcast skies, low temperatures, strong winds from the southeast, making visibility along the river poor. The previous night's drizzle had made the road slippery, with thick mud covering the riverbank slopes. Search teams spread out, splitting up to walk the riverside trails, while another patrol car circled Highway 79. Less than an hour later, an officer spotted a strange object on the grass edge not far from the road. It was a black high-heeled shoe, wet and caked in mud, matching the description of what Marty had been wearing when she left the party. A few meters away, they found a piece of broken glass, sized to match the door glass of an old pickup truck. Beneath the soft soil, clear small tire tracks were imprinted, as if it had veered sharply off the road and skidded toward the area near the bridge. The intermittent marks suggested the vehicle may have stopped or turned around before leaving the pavement. Police cordoned off the area within a radius of nearly 200 meters from the evidence discovery point. A forensics team was called in to photograph, measure distances, and collect mud samples. All were sealed and numbered per procedure. A few curious locals stopped to watch, including a truck driver who said that the night before, while driving over Bear Creek Bridge around near midnight, he saw a beam of light like headlights stopped in the fog, then vanishing after a few minutes. This statement was recorded but could not yet be verified. As darkness fell, the Mississippi began to rise. The drizzle and cold wind made checking under the bridge difficult. Murky waters carried branches, trash and mud, preventing rescue teams from pinpointing the exact skid path leading down. They decided to use a small boat with spotlights to scan the riverbank. Under the yellow beams reflecting off the water, the river surface looked like a solid black mirror. Occasionally, a faint oil slick appeared on the surface, but its origin was unclear. Police took samples for testing, but initial results showed it was just engine oil from a nearby anchored fishing boat. On the second day, the search expanded to both sides of Bear Creek Bridge. Volunteers brought iron hooks and tow ropes, sweeping the river edges. Another group waded along the south levee edge, looking for signs of objects swept by the current. An officer spotted deep grooves in the wet grass, tire tracks matching the size of a Ford Ranger pickup, but the drag marks ended at the slope edge, where the ground dropped straight into the river. No vehicle debris, no brake marks, just mud and cold water. The Hannibal Police Department coordinated with the Marion County Water Rescue Team, deploying additional boats equipped with basic sonar devices. They scanned the riverbed in the deepest area near the bridge, but the images on the screen were just blurry blobs, no clear shapes. A technician noted a small box-shaped reflection point, but the report deemed it possibly just metal trash. The area was known for dumping old equipment, so the result wasn't considered evidence. However, the note object detected near Creek Base later became key data in the re-investigation file. Meanwhile, the land investigation team re-scanned the entire route Marty might have taken. They stopped at Walmart, where she said she'd go, questioned night shift employees, checked security camera logs, but the 1996 system only retained tape for 48 hours, and the data had been overwritten. No witnesses remembered seeing her. A nearby gas station confirmed a young woman stopped to buy water and a bit of gas around 9:30, but they weren't sure it was Marty. 3 days passed, the search expanded to the western grasslands, but heavy rain continued to cause sinking ground, flooding many areas. On the map, police circled the suspected area stretching along the riverbank from Riverview Lounge to Bear Creek Bridge, where the last traces appeared. They concluded the vehicle likely fell into the river, or was swept away. Late afternoon on the third day, as the sun dipped completely below the water, the search paused. The area around the bridge was barricaded with warning tape, preserving the scene for further decisions from the police department. Yellow ribbons fluttered in the cold wind, signaling the start of an investigation that no one in town at the time imagined would drag on for nearly 3 decades. On the morning of the 4th day after Marty Evans was reported missing, the Hannibal police decided to expand the search scope down to the confluence of Bear Creek and Salt River, where the water was deeper and the currents far more complex than the river section near the bridge. The reason was a report from a local barge captain, who said that on the night of February 10th, while piloting a cargo barge through this river bend, he heard a sound very much like metal hitting the water. It was drizzling, windy. He thought it might be equipment falling from the boat, so he didn't report it. Only when Marty's disappearance hit the news did he realize the sound matched the incident's timeline. This statement prompted police to re-examine the Salt River area, which flows into the Mississippi and could sweep away any object falling from the bridge or northern riverbank. A Marion County water rescue team was dispatched, bringing 2 boats equipped with old side-scan sonar, technology common in the 1990s, but with limited resolution. They began scanning from the river intersection, working upstream toward Bear Creek Bridge. The sonar screen showed multiple reflections from the riverbed: branches, metal trash, old tires, and large rocks. The murky swirling water made identifying clear shapes nearly impossible. However, at about 60 meters from the west bank, the sonar technician reported an unusual reflection zone, box-shaped and roughly 3 meters long. They noted the coordinates, screenshot the display screen, and marked it with a buoy. The printed data was blurry, showing just tiny bright dots on a dark background. Without specialized diving gear or underwater cameras, the team could only drop tow hooks a few times. The heavy line sank quickly, but the hooks snagged nothing. Cold winds, swift currents, and riverbed mud halted retrieval efforts after a few hours. By day's end, only a short report was filed, concluding metal reflection object detected, unidentified. Deep water area, difficult access. This report was forwarded to the Hannibal Police Department, filed with the Marty Evans missing person case. No further directives were issued. Meanwhile, some residents along the riverbank recounted hearing a loud noise, like a car hitting the railing, then falling into the water on the exact night Marty disappeared. A woman at a nearby farm said her dogs barked for over half an hour, while her husband heard an engine revving then cutting out abruptly. However, with heavy rain and rising river, no one dared to check. When police followed up, these witnesses couldn't recall exact times or directions of the sounds. Those statements, though noteworthy, lacked verifiable basis. After 5 days of fruitless searching, the rescue team leader decided to suspend diving operations due to bad weather. Rain continued, river levels rose high, completely covering the tire tracks and collapsed slopes the land team had once found. A patrol boat noted an additional oil slick, stretching nearly half a mile, but analysis showed it was from transport vessels, unrelated to the disappearance. Officers began leaning toward the traffic accident hypothesis. Marty may have driven home fatigued or lost control, the vehicle skidding off the road and into the river. However, no physical evidence confirmed it. Forensics technicians reviewing scene photos noted an oddity: the skid marks at the bridge area didn't align with the road's natural direction, but crossed diagonally, as if the vehicle was pulled or pushed off the pavement. The tire angles imprinted in the soil also didn't match a free-fall trajectory. This report was attached but not followed up, due to lack of key evidence: the vehicle. In 1996, deep riverbed surveying capabilities were very limited. Renting specialized equipment exceeded the local police department's budget. The file noted technically infeasible at present time. A few days later, the Mississippi overflowed its banks, carrying mud and debris, erasing every remaining trace. Rescue efforts were suspended indefinitely. Marty's family was informed that nothing suspicious had been found, and police couldn't yet conclude. Local media ran brief stories on the case, calling it a possible accident disappearance. No one in town knew that at the bottom of that river, the sonar equipment had captured a blurry mass, the only clue suggesting the Ford Ranger might still lie somewhere in the cold mud. But in 1996, no one could prove it. The case faded into silence, leaving in the file a brief note: Salt River scan, unidentified object. No further action. After nearly 2 weeks of searching along the river with no results, the Hannibal police were forced to change the direction of the investigation. The physical traces on the banks of Bear Creek had now been washed away by rain and the current, so the possibility of a simple accident was gradually eliminated. Instead, the investigative agency focused on Marty Evans' personal relationships, believing she might have been harmed due to personal conflicts. The people who attended the wedding party that evening were called in for statements. They all said Marty left Riverview Lounge alone, looking hurried and anxious, saying she would stop by Walmart Hannibal to meet an acquaintance. No one knew exactly who that person was. From here, 3 suspect directions were identified. The first direction is Eric Daniels, Marty's ex-boyfriend, a maintenance worker at Walmart Hannibal. He claimed to be at home watching football on the evening the incident occurred. When police checked, the time clock showed Eric left the store about 45 minutes earlier than his shift end time, matching the time Marty left the party. A co-worker remembered seeing him looking annoyed when he left. However, no one confirmed they met afterward. Despite the inconsistent statement, police did not have enough grounds for charges. The file noted, alibi not solid, needs monitoring. The second direction is Jack Reynolds, Marty's ex-husband, a construction contractor in Palmyra. Jack had a recorded history of violent behavior in the past, but had not been prosecuted. When questioned, he claimed to be at home with his assistant, pouring a concrete foundation for the backyard parking area. The assistant confirmed his statement, but the materials invoice was dated the morning after the disappearance. A store employee said Jack came to buy supplies, looking tired and rushed. When police requested a warrant to inspect the newly poured concrete, the request was denied due to lack of specific evidence. Though not charged, Jack remained on the police watch list. The third direction is the brothers Kevin and Gary Moore, who worked at Quincy Barge Yard, a barge mooring dock about 15 miles north of Hannibal. The two had prior records for theft and assault. Some of Marty's old neighbors had said she once argued with Kevin about noise in the apartment complex years earlier. When interrogated, both denied knowing Marty, claiming that on the night of February 10th, they were at a bar in Quincy. However, no one at the bar clearly remembered seeing them. Police noted the statements were contradictory, but had no corroborating evidence. In the days that followed, investigators returned to Walmart to verify more about Eric. A security guard said he had seen him standing outside the parking lot talking on the phone around 9 p.m., looking tense. This detail was not enough to confirm he met Marty. Police checked Eric's car but found no suspicious traces. At the same time, another investigative team returned to Palmyra, noting the concrete slab behind Jack's house was still fresh. Once again, the search warrant was denied for lack of legal basis. Monitoring of Jack was temporarily suspended, only noting suspicious motive, unverified. For the Moore brothers, police looked further into the barge yard where they worked. The manager said they worked the night shift right at the end of the weekend. Marty disappeared, often clearing scrap metal around the dock, using an old winch to haul loads. A co-worker remembered seeing their old pickup truck parked near the river the next morning, tires covered in mud. When asked, Kevin said went to haul iron from the old warehouse. No one on the team had evidence to contradict it. The investigators were suspicious, but could not prove anything. By the end of February, all investigative directions stalled. No physical evidence, no witnesses, no vehicle. The summary report concluded, insufficient basis to determine crime. Victim and vehicle still missing. The case file was archived, marked unresolved, unsolved. Marty's family continued to send letters and make calls hoping for news, but the police department could only respond that the case remains open. On the evidence shelf in the investigations office, the yellow folder labeled Marty Evans, clipped shut, sat among dozens of other missing persons cases. In Hannibal, the incident was quickly forgotten. For those who once knew Marty, the common feeling was just a vague emptiness, as if she had vanished with that cold winter night itself, leaving behind a series of unanswered questions. After the official investigation paused, the town of Hannibal quickly returned to its daily rhythm. The missing person flyers posted at gas stations and the library gradually faded. The Evans family did not give up. They hired boats to drag along the river, asked every fisherman, but no one saw any traces. In early spring, when the Mississippi waters began to recede, a resident named Edna Cooper discovered a woman's wallet caught in the grass along the west bank. Inside were still identification papers, a bank card, a photo of Marty's son, all intact, just wet and muddy. No cash, but the name Marty Evans was still clearly readable on the insurance card. Police confirmed it was the victim's possession and took it into custody. The area where the wallet was found was nearly 2 miles from Bear Creek Bridge, outside the previous search zone. Initial speculation was that it might have floated downstream from an upstream river section. Finding the wallet revived hopes, but when police returned to drag the surrounding area, they found no other evidence. No car, no traces. A few weeks later, a group of volunteers walking along the Salt River discovered a black high-heeled shoe in the reeds near the west bank. The shoe was peeling, strap broken, sole caked in mud, size 7, matching Marty's shoe size. The evidence was collected, sealed, and sent to the lab. But in 1996, DNA technology was still rudimentary. The wet fabric, damaged fiber structure, could not separate human cells. The appraisal report noted, "Not suitable for testing store and warehouse." The wallet and shoe were then moved to the Hannibal Police Department's evidence storage, along with the glass and mud samples collected near the bridge. All were boxed, labeled with the case code. Due to lack of appraisal results, they were only noted as evidence of undetermined value. Time passed, and the case fell into silence. Inside the police department, the Evans case was still mentioned in meetings as a regrettable case. Some officers believed it was an accident. The car might have gone off the road into the river on a rainy night. But others thought the wallet and shoe appearing in 2 different locations, more than 3 miles apart, was a sign someone deliberately threw them in. Neither side had enough reasoning to convince the other. By the end of 1996, the file was temporarily closed. The summary report stated, "No additional evidence discovered, location of victim or vehicle undetermined." The case officially entered pending status, awaiting new information. Investigators moved on to other cases, and Marty Evans' name gradually disappeared from the weekly meeting lists. When the local investigations agency reorganized files in early 1997, all evidence was sealed and sent to the Marion County Archives. In the inventory, the recorder mistakenly wrote the name as Mary Evans. This seemingly minor detail caused the file to be entered incorrectly when the data system was digitized in the early 2000s. In the years that followed, people were transferred or retired one by one. The box containing the wallet, shoe and glass samples remained in cold storage, numbered #960210E, never opened again. A young appraiser once suggested retesting with new techniques, but superiors said, costs not commensurate with solvability potential. The case remained stagnant on paper. Marty's family continued sending letters to the police every year, hoping for news, but the responses were always the same. No new information. Time dusted everything: the files, the hopes, and the name Marty Evans itself. In Hannibal, the story of the woman who vanished after a wedding party night became a faint memory, only mentioned occasionally in gatherings of retired police. No one knew that, in the evidence storage in Jefferson City, those seemingly meaningless things, the wallet, the shoe, and a few mud-stuck glass shards, lay silently for many years, waiting for the day someone patient enough, and technology advanced enough would make them speak again. In early 1997, with no new information or leads, Marty Evans' disappearance was officially removed from the active investigation list. The summary report sent to Marion County clearly stated, possible traffic accident, vehicle and victim location undetermined. Hannibal police concluded that if the car had gone into the river on a rainy night, it might have been swept into deep waters where salvage was impossible. After that brief conclusion, an on-duty officer handwrote an addition, "No manpower to continue investigation." Marty's file, the yellow folder coded #960210E, was sent to the Greene County Cold Case Archives, where hundreds of unsolved missing persons cases from across Missouri were stored. The storage room was in the basement of the old police building, with long metal shelves and a thick smell of damp paper in the air. The file consisted only of a few reports, photos of the wallet, shoes, a search map along the Salt River, and a list of 3 suspects who had been questioned. No new evidence, no witnesses, no vehicle. That year, the entire original investigative team was reassigned to other major cases. A young officer was tasked with monitoring the file, but the job was just periodic inventory checks. No one really continued searching. Around that time, many other serious cases overloaded the police force, and a disappearance with no signs of crime like Marty's was ranked in the lowest priority group. When DNA technology began to be used in the late 1990s, some old cases were proposed for retesting. But the evidence in Marty's case, the wallet, shoes, glass shards, were all rated not suitable for appraisal due to damage and contamination. With no budget to send for out-of-state testing, the exhibits continued to be stored. The file only added one line, pending further resources. The Evans family, especially Marty's sister Linda Carter, persisted in contacting the police every year. The responses they received were always the same. The case remains open, but nothing new. After a few years, Linda realized her sister's case had been forgotten. In 2002, she moved away from Hannibal, but still kept a copy of the file, treating it as Marty's last relic. In the early 2000s, when Missouri began digitizing cold case data, many files had information entered incorrectly. In the new list, Marty's name was mistakenly recorded as Mary Evans, causing the case to no longer appear in the system when investigative teams searched. From then on, the case nearly vanished from all periodic reports. No one realized that in the Greene County archives, a small metal box was holding evidence that could have changed the entire case conclusion. In the following years, most of the original investigators retired. The evidence storage custodian's only task was to preserve papers and file boxes. In the 2010 inventory, file #9600210E was listed briefly. Evans Mary, missing person, 1996, no activity. A red ink stamp, no further action was affixed to the last page. From then on, no one mentioned Marty's name in annual meetings anymore. In Hannibal, memories of the disappearance gradually faded. The Bear Creek Bridge was repaired. Riverview Lounge, the place where Marty had her last party, was closed and demolished. Old neighbors moved away, leaving only a faded photo of her in a wooden frame on her mother's altar, with handwritten words, "Still waiting for you." For over 2 decades, Marty's disappearance was forgotten in silence. No one in the police department still remembered the case. No one reopened the dust-covered evidence box in cold storage. Occasionally, in cold case meetings, her name appeared fleetingly in the probable accident list, then was brushed aside again. Only in early 2020, when the Missouri State Police launched a project to re-review cold case files statewide and apply next-generation DNA technology, did the name Evans appear on the system again. And it was from that data line, restored after nearly 30 years, that the journey to find the truth about the woman who vanished from Hannibal began anew, opening the next chapter for a file thought to have sunk completely into darkness. In January 2024, nearly 30 years after Marty Evans disappeared, Detective Karen Holt of the Greene County Cold Case Unit was assigned to review missing persons cases along the Missouri River. The project was funded by the Federal Investigation Fund, focusing on cases with evidence still in storage. In the long list of files, Holt noticed a misspelled name, Mary Evans, missing person, 1996. No activity. She opened the file and recognized the familiar description, female 27 years old, missing after leaving a wedding party in Hannibal. Possible accident, vehicle not found. A woman and a vehicle vanishing at the same time, that was the kind of case Holt always believed was rarely an accident. She requested the original file from the Greene County archives. When the metal box was opened, a thick layer of dust covered the old documents, river maps, crime scene photos, and 2 evidence bags containing a wallet and a pair of black shoes. Among the yellowed papers, Holt discovered a black and white sonar print, dated February 1996, taken from the Salt River. Though the image was faint, she could still see bright blocky streaks, metal reflections. At the bottom of the paper was a handwritten note, "Object detected. Possible metal structure, no action taken." Her intuition told her this could be a trace of the victim's 1984 Ford Ranger. Holt contacted the Missouri State Water Patrol for verification. A veteran engineer reviewed the photo and confirmed it very likely a vehicle under the mud. The response prompted Holt to immediately jot in her notebook, "Re-examine Salt River, vehicle search priority." Deeper review revealed 3 more anomalies. The 1996 sonar photo had never been reanalyzed. Evidence samples remained in storage, never tested for DNA with modern technology. The suspect Moore report mentioned the Quincy barge yard, an area never investigated on site. Those 3 details were enough for Holt to reopen the case. In the first team meeting of the year, she presented to a group of 2 investigators and 1 forensic specialist. They agreed that the Evans case met all 3 reinvestigation criteria: existing evidence, old sonar data needing verification, and a river area capable of concealing a vehicle. On January 18, 2024, Holt submitted a reinvestigation proposal to the Greene County Prosecutor's Office. The report stated clearly, the Evans case has breakthrough potential through DNA techniques and new generation sonar. Recommend reopening file #960210E and authorizing resurvey of Salt River, Bear Creek. At the same time, she sent a request to the Jefferson City Forensic Lab to re-examine the stored evidence. Upon receiving approval, Holt went directly to Hannibal to survey the terrain. The town had changed a lot, but the Bear Creek Bridge, where tire tracks were found in 1996, still stood there. The winter river water was calm, reflecting the gray sky. Holt met a few retired officers who had been involved in the case. They said that at the time, there had been an unusual sonar detection, but not enough equipment to verify it. "Maybe the car is still down at the bottom of the river," one said half-jokingly. The remark made Holt ponder for a long time. The next day, she surveyed the area along the Salt River with a technician. Holt marked 3 key points on the map: the Bear Creek Bridge area, where tire tracks and mudslides were found; the west bank of the Salt River, the location where the wallet and shoes were discovered; Quincy Barge Yard, the old barge dock where the Moore brothers once worked. The distance between the 3 points was just over 5 miles, close enough for a perpetrator to move by river or levee access road. She noted, if criminal, this was premeditated behavior with knowledge of the terrain. Back at the hotel, Holt reopened the old sonar print. Under the desk lamp, the faint bright dots formed a box frame, like a truck cab. She wasn't sure, but her seasoned intuition from dozens of cold cases made her believe this was no coincidence. She decided that river had to be rescanned with new technology. On January 25, Holt sent an official memo to the Missouri State Water Patrol requesting deployment of 3D multi-frequency sonar in the Salt River, Bear Creek area. Simultaneously, she requested a search warrant limited to the Quincy Barge Yard, where the old suspect had worked, to sweep the mooring area and personnel records. Both requests were approved in the same week. By the end of January, the Greene County Task Force vehicles headed to Hannibal, carrying sonar equipment and survey drones. Karen Holt stood on the riverbank, looking at the vast water surface rippling lightly under the cold wind. In her hand was the old photo printed from the file, Marty Evans's face with a gentle smile. She folded the photo, placed it in her notebook, and looked out at the river. Nearly 30 years had passed, but Holt knew, under that mud, there was likely still an untold story, and she would be the first to uncover it after all those years of silence. When Detective Karen Holt received approval for the resurvey plan of the Salt River area, she understood this was the only chance to reopen the Marty Evans case, after nearly 30 years. Modern 3D sonar technology allowed seeing through the mud layer, something the 1996 search teams were completely powerless against. On February 15, 2024, Holt coordinated with the Missouri State Water Patrol to deploy multi-frequency sonar equipment. The misty river, gray cold water, and radar-equipped boat quietly cut through the current. The screen displayed wave strips scanning the bottom, blurry images like ghosts, hidden under the mud. For the first 3 days, the team only saw rotting logs, old boat hulls, and bits of scrap metal. But on the 4th day, at coordinates near Bear Creek Bridge, the technician shouted, strong metal reflection, at 7 meters depth. On the screen appeared a 12-foot-long object, boxy shape, dense return, signs of a solid metal structure. Holt watched intently. That shape was too similar to the 1984 Ford Ranger pickup, the model Marty drove on the night she vanished. She recorded the GPS coordinates, circled the area, and had buoys dropped to mark it. A yellow outline appeared on the screen. The object lay tilted 30 degrees south, half buried under the mud. To avoid errors, Holt requested a rescan, using both multi-frequency sonar and ROV camera simultaneously. As the device dove down, lights pierced the murky water, revealing rusted metal glinting, curved like a truck hood. The whole team held their breath. The live image sharpened, a small truck frame, faded silver paint, front wheels sunk in mud. "Confirm exact length," Holt said quickly. The technician replied, "About 12 feet 2 inches. She noted matches 1984 Ford Ranger. Everything was starting to align. After cross-referencing the terrain map, Holt realized this location was right at the river section, with the 1996 report of tire tracks and glass shards, overlooked because of high water levels at the time. She gripped her notebook tightly, whispering, "We just found what they overlooked for 28 years. The patrol team immediately set up safety barriers, marking the salvage area. Rescue forces were mobilized from Jefferson City. On the bank, Holt and the officers set up a command tent, preparing cameras and forensic logs. That evening, she reopened the printed sonar image, looking at the faint bright reflection lines stretching like heartbeats on the screen. The image evoked a chilling feeling, not an inert iron mass, but evidence waiting to be retold. The next morning, Holt returned with the dive team for final confirmation. As the ROV approached the object, the camera panned, a wheel stuck in mud, Ford logo peeking under moss. All doubts vanished. "This is Marty Evans's truck," Holt said, voice trembling. She ordered the area sealed, preparing an emergency salvage plan. At the scene, she marked it with 3 buoys, one at the front, one at the rear, one where fragments were suspected. The GPS map was saved, noted Bear Creek Bridge area. Salt River, 7 m depth, coordinates 39.7254, in, 91.3528 w. In her investigation journal, Holt wrote, "Object matches 1996 missing vehicle description. Evidence indicates intentional submersion, not accident. Recommend salvage within 48 hours. On the bank, reporters heard rumors of the search, but were kept at a distance. Holt made no statements. She knew a single misstep, and the river could swallow the only remaining evidence. As the sun set, light glanced off the water, reflecting faint orange streaks on the waves. Holt stood silently, watching the yellow buoys bobbing in the current. A mix of excitement and fear, because down there might still be a truth someone once tried to bury. That night, in the temporary command room, Holt drafted a report to the prosecutor. Metal object shape corresponding to 1984 Ford Ranger discovered. Coordinates within victim's route of travel, unusual depth and tilt angle, possibly from mechanical towing. She ended the report with the line, "Recommend salvage authorization. Prioritize preserving evidence intact." On February 18, 2024, the salvage plan was approved. Holt pursed her lips as she looked at the official order in her hand. Nearly 3 decades later, the river was finally about to reveal the truth it had hidden. The night before salvage day, Holt drove to Bear Creek Bridge. Cold wind blew across the river, ripples reflecting moonlight. She stood looking at the water, where the yellow buoy still floated silently. In her mind, she replayed the image of Marty leaving the wedding party that night. Red-black dress, leather jacket, stepping into the truck with a calm smile. A short road, a turn, then gone. Until now. She whispered softly, "Tomorrow you'll be found, Marty." Under that cold water, the truck had waited nearly 30 years to see the light again. And Holt knew that was just the first step in pulling the truth up from the river's surface. On February 18, 2024, after 3 days of sonar scanning, Detective Karen Holt's team, along with the Missouri State Water Patrol, officially launched the plan to salvage the metal object discovered at the bottom of the Salt River, near Bear Creek Bridge. Sonar equipment identified the object's length at about 12 feet, matching the body of a 1984 Ford Ranger, the model Marty Evans drove on the night she vanished. On the morning of the salvage, the water was gray and murky, thick fog hanging. As the hydraulic crane lifted the object from the river surface, mud sluiced off, revealing the rusted frame, license plate PNB 1116 still faintly visible. Holt held her breath. After 28 years, the vehicle that vanished with the victim finally resurfaced. The forensics team set up a mobile tent right at the scene to seal evidence. When the driver's side door was opened, damp air rushed out. Inside, the front seat was covered in thick mud, but on the passenger seat, a black leather jacket was still clearly visible, the type Marty wore to the wedding party that night. In the glove compartment, they found a silver bracelet engraved with ME, a family heirloom confirmed to belong to her. Under ultraviolet light, the forensics group detected dried bloodstains on the floor mat, along with some hair fibers and small skin fragments stuck to the passenger door edge. On the inside of the truck door, there were nail scratches, about 10 centimeters long, indicating someone had tried to open it from inside. Under the back seat lingered a few small glass shards, possibly from taillights or a broken mirror before the truck sank. Observing the exterior, Holt noticed parallel gouges on the rear bumper, drag-like rather than natural slide marks. A technician assessed, these look like cable cinch marks, like steel cable used at winch docks. That immediately made Holt think of the Quincy Barge Yard, where Kevin and Gary Moore once worked. As the truck was hoisted onto the bank, the rear was crumpled, but the frame structure remained intact. The gear shift was in N neutral, indicating the engine wasn't running when it sank. The windshield was unbroken, suggesting impact force from the rear, like being towed or pushed. Holt leaned close to the floor edge, and saw, peeking through the mud, a small metal object, the truck key, stamped with Quincy Barge and Company. The evidence was sealed, and sent immediately to the Jefferson City lab for examination. The entire salvage process was video recorded, every frame close-up photographed for legal comparison. That evening, Holt held an emergency meeting with the investigation team. She presented the findings. Vehicle found at location on Marty's route. Inside jacket, bracelet, and female-type bloodstains. Rear bumper with industrial cable marks. Key with Barge Yard logo, evidence linking to Moore. She concluded, the truck didn't go into the river by accident, it was intentionally towed. The next morning, the forensics team conducted a preliminary scene analysis. The ME engraved bracelet confirmed identity. Hair and skin samples were sealed for DNA testing. They also found a black high-heeled shoe caught in the seat crevice, matching the victim's missing shoe pair. The interim report to the department noted, evidence and discovery location indicate intentional vehicle submersion. Victim resistance marks present. DNA examination needed to confirm identity and match suspects. Holt stood on the bank looking at the truck lying tilted in the sealed tent, feeling like she was facing a silent confession. The Missouri River still flowed lazily, but now it had returned a piece of the truth it had hidden for nearly 30 years. On February 20th, the Ford Ranger was transported to the Missouri State Crime Lab. Examination began that very night. Every detail was documented. Damaged front seat, gear in neutral, passenger door scratches, blood on floor, and undercarriage mud mixed with metal residue. An engineer reported the mud contained manganese slag particles, the type common at industrial winch docks. Holt knew she had found the key. If this residue matched samples from the Quincy Barge Yard, she could prove the crime occurred there, not along Marty's route home. That evening, she reopened the map of the disappearance night route, from Riverview Lounge to the Barge Yard area. Only 11 miles, perfectly matching the route Moore claimed. She jotted in her notebook, "Truck towed from dock B2. Verify water level timing and cable position." Before leaving the office, Holt looked at Marty Evans' photo, the young woman with green eyes and a gentle smile. She whispered, "We've found your truck, Marty. Now it's time for the truth." That night, the comprehensive report was sent to the Greene County prosecutor. Victim's vehicle identified. Physical evidence indicates intentional disposal. Recommend continuing DNA examination and expanding investigation of suspect Kevin Moore. After nearly 30 years, Marty Evans' disappearance officially left the unsolved category and was reclassified as homicide investigation. Active case. From the river where she vanished, the silent evidence finally began to speak. After the 1984 Ford Ranger was salvaged from the bottom of the Salt River, all the evidence was transferred to the Jefferson City Identification Center. Detective Karen Holt understood that this was the most crucial phase. If any remaining DNA or traces matched Marty Evans' profile, the case would officially be classified as murder. The laboratory proceeded to extract samples from 3 main sources: tangled hair in the back seat, a small piece of skin stuck on the door frame, and a dried blood stain on the car carpet. Next-gen sequencing DNA technology was applied to recover the genetic sequence, even though the samples had been submerged in water for nearly 3 decades. The first results were sent back after a week. The hair and skin sample matched Marty Evans' biological profile exactly, cross-referenced with the samples stored from her mother in old medical records. Holt read the conclusion line with her heart pounding. After 28 years, the body had not been found, but the DNA had confirmed the victim was the woman who disappeared in 1996. The next results took the case in a new direction. Under the victim's remaining fingernails, the technician isolated an unidentified male DNA sequence. It did not match Jack Reynolds' ex-husband's sample, but it partially matched the sample from Kevin Moore obtained when he was arrested for evidence tampering. The similarity rate reached 98.4%, too high to be coincidence. In parallel, the chemical analysis team examined the mud and material stuck under the car's undercarriage. They discovered industrial slag residue, manganese slag characteristic only of the Quincy Barge Yard area, where the Moore brothers once worked. This trace indicated the vehicle had not drifted naturally from the residential area into the river, but had been at the barge dock area before sinking. When Holt received the report, she sat in silence for a long time. All the pieces were starting to fit: the B2 dock location, the victim's DNA, the male sample under the nails, and the slag residue type, all pointing to the same conclusion. There was no room left for the accident hypothesis. The Identification Center sent additional infrared spectroscopic photos of the passenger seat, a faint handprint pressed hard into the leather, indicating the person on the right had resisted strongly. Under ultraviolet light, small scratches became visible, evidence the victim had tried to open the door as the car was pushed into the water. Holt felt as if she were witnessing Martha's final moments herself. 3 days later, a 72-page comprehensive report was delivered to her desk. The conclusion was succinct: evidence samples, DNA and environmental chemical analysis indicate external force intervention. Likelihood of victim death due to drowning following head trauma. Case has criminal elements, classification, homicide. Holt read the final line several times. Nearly 30 years later, the disappearance had finally been determined to be a murder. She sent the report to the Greene County prosecutor and requested reopening the prosecution file. In the attached memo, Holt emphasized, female DNA matches Marty Evans exactly. Male DNA partially matches Kevin Moore. Mud sample contains industrial residue from barge yard. Signs of resistance on the seat and blood stains in the vehicle. Prosecutor Anderson reviewed it and said, if this is a crime, it was deliberately concealed, and the perpetrator knew how to exploit the river itself. That statement made Holt recall Moore's old statement, the water washes everything away, but now she understood, it was the water that had preserved the evidence, every grain of mud, every fiber scrap, every DNA cell. On March 12, 2024, Greene County issued a decision to transfer the case to Special Criminal Investigation. Police officially regarded Kevin Moore as suspect number 1. Holt presented at the internal meeting, "This case isn't just about finding the car, we've proven the act of murder and disposal. The river doesn't lie, it just waits for someone who knows how to listen." Right after that, she and the forensics team returned to the scene once more to comb the salvage area. They found an additional small round glass shard, possibly from a taillight, and a dent on the passenger side door frame, indicating strong impact before sinking. These details matched the hypothesis that the victim had been knocked down and pushed into the car. That evening, Holt stayed alone in the office, rereading the entire old file. In the 1996 report, the final line read, "Insufficient evidence, possibility of accident." She crossed it out, then wrote below, "Intentional murder, substantiated evidence." The next morning, the forensic results summary was sent to the state-level reporter. The title line was succinct, "Evans 1996 file, victim identified. Classification, homicide." When Holt saw the red stamp affixed to the file, she knew after 28 years, Marty Evans was no longer a missing person, but a victim of a murder made to disappear. That night, Holt drove across Bear Creek Bridge, where streetlights flickered on the Missouri River's surface. The night wind was bitterly cold, carrying river mist, but she smiled. Beneath that water, justice had finally spoken. On February 15, 2024, while Detective Karen Holt was combing through the old electronic data of the case, she stumbled upon an undigitized note entry in the original Greene County file. It was a 1996 witness statement, a yellowed paper copy, buried among documents not entered into the system. Holt opened it, reading the first line, "Witness Mike Halper, 34 years old, Bear Creek Bridge repair worker." Under the statement section, there was a passage that made her stop immediately. "Around 11:30 p.m., I saw 2 men dragging a heavy object down the riverbank, near the bridge. They used flashlights. There was a loud noise like metal scraping on the ground. When I asked, they said they were salvaging stuff. I couldn't see their faces clearly, because it was dark. Just remember one had long hair, the other was shorter and stocky." Holt sat still for a moment. In the original reports, this detail had never been mentioned. It seemed Mike Halper's statement had been overlooked when the file was archived, possibly because at the time, police suspected an accident, so it wasn't prioritized. She immediately contacted the Hannibal PD Administrative Office to verify. The result, Mike Halper's name had been listed as a secondary witness, but the statement was never entered into the 2000 digitization system. Holt drove straight to Hannibal that night. The old map showed Bear Creek Bridge, located near the car discovery area, less than 500 meters away. She realized right away, Halper's statement could be the missing piece in the entire story. The next morning, Holt located Mike Halper's personal file, now 62 years old, living in South Hannibal suburbs. He agreed to meet her at his home, an old wooden house on the forest edge. When Holt showed him a photo of the just salvaged 1984 Ford Ranger, he was silent for a long time, then nodded, "Right there. I told the police back then, but they said it was probably an accident." Holt recorded the entire conversation. Halper recounted that night, he was inspecting the bridge after a heavy rainstorm, then saw headlights from a small truck below the bank. There were 2 men dragging something into the river. It had to be heavy. I heard metal scraping on rocks. One wore a light jacket, the other had a wool hat. When they saw me, they turned off the flashlight right away and drove off. I don't remember the license plate, just know the truck was old, dark color. Holt opened her laptop, showing Halper photos of 2 men from the old file, Kevin and Gary Moore, who once worked at Quincy Barge Yard. Halper looked closely, his eyes moving slowly, then stopping at Kevin's photo. "I remember the longer-haired, tall build like this. The other was short, bigger belly, like the one next to him." Holt asked again, "Are you sure?" Halper nodded. If I have to pick, I'd say it's them. But it was dark back then. I only saw for a few seconds. That was enough for Holt to reopen the investigation direction on the Moore brothers, two names that had been briefly mentioned in the 1996 report, then vanished. She accessed the Missouri and Illinois state crime databases, pulling records. The results showed Gary Moore had died in 2012 in a traffic accident in Iowa. But Kevin Moore, the older brother, was still alive, currently residing in Quincy, Illinois, less than 30 miles from Hannibal. Holt immediately sent a personal verification request through the Missouri State Bureau of Investigation. The file showed Kevin, 58 years old, working security for an old river transport company, with a prior assault conviction in 1994 and 2 bar fight arrests. He lived alone in a mobile home, on the edge of the Quincy River, once an industrial area of the old barge yard. That evening, Holt submitted a summary report to the Greene County Prosecutor's Office, listing the evidence linking Kevin Moore to the case. Quincy Barge and Company. Key found in victim's car, matches the company where Kevin once worked. Mud sample containing industrial slag residue, characteristic of barge yard. Witness Mike Halper saw 2 men dragging a heavy object to the river on the night of February 10, 1996. One matching Kevin's description. Gary Moore, younger brother, deceased. Only Kevin remains prosecutable. The prosecutor requested Holt gather additional direct observation evidence before proceeding to formal interrogation. On February 18, Holt drove to Quincy, beginning surveillance on Kevin Moore. His mobile home was in a tall weed-overgrown lot, overlooking the Mississippi riverbank. An old pickup truck parked outside, Illinois plates. From the surveillance vehicle, Holt noted, Kevin lived reclusively, minimal neighbor interaction, often leaving home at night, driving to the old dock area. Holt installed a long-range camera in her vehicle, and reported back to the center for a temporary tracking warrant. Through the lens, she saw the middle-aged man with silver hair long to his shoulders, tall, thin build, exactly Halper's description. Every evening, he carried a large flashlight, walking along the water's edge, as if checking something. Once Holt saw him stop for a long time near the abandoned warehouse, once Quincy Barge Yard B2, then throw something into the river. Holt knew she was closing in on the answer. All the evidence, from DNA to geology, from witnesses to the scene, pointed in one direction, Kevin Moore. But she still needed something strong enough to charge him. That night, peering through binoculars, Holt wrote the final line in her notebook, target Kevin Moore. Direct involvement in Marty Evans' case. Next step, obtain search warrant for old barge yard area. Kevin's flashlight beam still flickered along the riverbank. In the silent darkness, Holt knew 30 years of silence were gradually being broken. On February 20th, 2024, Detective Karen Holt received surveillance orders on Kevin Moore, the sole survivor of the brother duo once suspected in the Marty Evans case. Moore's mobile home sat on the edge of Quincy, Illinois, near the abandoned Quincy Barge and Company dock area, full of scrap metal and junk trucks. A 72-hour temporary surveillance warrant was court-approved, allowing Holt to install remote monitoring equipment. 2 infrared cameras were mounted at the fence and rear storage area, where Moore frequently went. A thermal camera on Holt's vehicle recorded all nighttime activity. In the first 2 days, Moore lived shut in, little talk with neighbors, mostly going out at night, carrying burlap sacks or heavy items to the back of the house, then burning them in a metal drum. On the second night, around 1 a.m., Holt saw through the camera Moore dragging a gray ash car mat from the shed, pouring gasoline and lighting it. The flames shot high. Moore stood watching for a long time, then stirred the ashes with an iron bar. Holt captured every frame, sending them to the center. The next morning, while Moore was at his night shift, the forensics team quietly approached, collecting remaining ash samples from the drum. Lab results confirmed. Partially burned fibers in the ash matched color, fiber structure, and rubber backing with the gray matte fragment found in Marty Evans' 1984 Ford Ranger. The report concluded, high likelihood same manufacturing origin, suspected evidence destruction. From here, Holt was certain Moore knew the case had been reopened and was trying to erase traces. On February 22, she requested an emergency search warrant for the mobile home and rear storage area. The warrant was approved the same day. When Moore left for work, Holt and the Quincy PD team raided. The rundown house reeked of oil and cigarettes. On the table was a half-read local newspaper, with the headline, Missouri 1996 Cold Case Reopened. New evidence found. During the search, the investigation team seized several key items: a rusty 4-inch folding knife, with dark brown stains on the blade, quick test positive for blood traces, a metal keychain shaped like a fish engraved with Quincy Barge and Company, 1995, matching the logo on the key seized from the victim's car, an old notebook hidden under the mattress, with notes Doc B2, that night, don't go back, and G, keep quiet. The G could be Gary Moore, Kevin's brother who died in 2012. In a wooden cabinet by the bed, Holt also found oil-stained rubber gloves, several industrial solvent bottles, and large black nylon bags. Under ultraviolet light, a 30 centimeters fluorescent streak appeared on the floor, sampled on-site by forensics. All evidence was sealed and transferred to the Jefferson City lab for DNA analysis. Holt compiled a comprehensive report that night: burned mat, evidence matching type from victim's car fragment, folding knife, with blood traces, Quincy Barge and Company keychain, direct link to barge yard area, notebook, notes alluding to crime night, and brother Gary. The Greene County prosecutor immediately approved a temporary arrest warrant for Kevin Moore. Initial charge: evidence destruction and obstruction of criminal investigation. On the night of February 22, Holt and the task force approached Moore's house. When the spotlight hit, he was standing on the porch, beer can in hand. Surprised, but showing no panic, Moore squinted at Holt. "Kevin Moore," she said calmly, "you're under arrest for evidence destruction in the Marty Evans murder case." Moore stepped back half a pace, laughing hoarsely. 30 years, and now you show up. What do you think you found?" Holt stayed silent, holding up the arrest warrant, while 2 officers advanced to cuff him. Before being loaded into the car, Moore turned back to look at Holt, his eyes cold and hard. "I didn't kill anyone. You're just digging up stuff no one wants to remember." Holt replied curtly, "We'll let the evidence speak." As the task force vehicle rolled away from the neighborhood, Holt glanced in the rearview mirror, seeing the mobile home sink into darkness. Only the faint yellow glow from the half-burned drum reflected on the old iron base. In her mind, every piece fit perfectly: the key, the slag residue, the unidentified male DNA, the witness seeing 2 men dragging a heavy object, and now, the man cuffed in the back seat. 30 years ago, Kevin Moore thought the Missouri River had buried every trace. But today, that same mud had returned the truth. And Holt knew, just one more step, and the case would close, not on hypothesis, but on confession. On March 22, 2024, exactly 1 month after the 1984 Ford Ranger was salvaged, Detective Karen Holt and the Greene County Task Force returned to Quincy, Illinois, to execute an arrest warrant for Kevin Moore, the last surviving man of the brother duo once suspected in the Marty Evans case. This time, the charge had been elevated to first-degree murder. Moore was arrested at an abandoned garage near the old Quincy Barge Yard site. He didn't resist, just stared at Holt with a somber, cold gaze. "You think over the past 30 years, I haven't been waiting for this day." At the Greene County Police Headquarters, Moore was taken to Interrogation Room 3. Holt and Lieutenant Darnell conducted the questioning directly. On the table, Holt laid out all the evidence: the Quincy Barge and Company key, a folding knife with blood traces, a charred carpet fragment, notebook notes, and DNA results, proving a male biological sample under the victim's fingernails. You worked at the Quincy Barge dock in 1996, right? Holt began. Moore nodded. Me and Gary, night shift, on the night of February 10th. Were you there? Yes. But things aren't what you think. Holt placed a photo of the rusted Ford Ranger in front of him. This vehicle, license plate PMB E1116, was found under the river. Inside were Marty Evans's DNA, and a male DNA sample that partially matches yours. Moore stared at the photo for a long time. DNA. After all these years, you still drag me out. Holt continued, her voice icy. We also found a Quincy Barge and Company key in the vehicle, and an identical keychain in your home. Moore smirked. Everyone had one of those. They gave them out to the whole team. Holt didn't respond, just opened the photo of the charred carpet ash. And this carpet? You burned it last week. Analysis shows it matches the type and fibers of the carpet in the victim's vehicle. The air in the room grew heavy. After a few seconds of silence, Moore said softly, "You don't know what happened." Holt leaned in. "Then tell me." He took a deep breath, his voice hoarse. That night, Marty came looking for Gary. She was drunk, raging with jealousy. They argued fiercely by the water's edge. I just happened to walk by. When I got close, they scuffled, and she slipped and fell into the river. I jumped in after her, but I couldn't find her. Gary panicked, told me to help. We pushed the vehicle into the water to cover it up. She died in an accident. No one wanted to kill her. Holt was silent, then asked, "If it was just an accident, why didn't you report it to the police?" Moore avoided her gaze, replying softly, "We had prior convictions. Who would believe me?" Holt opened an old map of the Quincy Barge yard. "You said the incident happened at Dock B1, near the power station." Moore nodded. She looked straight at him. The B1 power station was built in 2003, 7 years after the case. "Are you sure?" Moore hesitated briefly, then swallowed hard. "Maybe I misremembered. That spot, near B2. Holt pushed the map toward him. It was precisely B2 where the mud sample matching the undercarriage was found. "Do you want to amend your statement?" Moore was silent for a long time, then nodded. "Yes, at B2. That's where we pushed the vehicle." "Who was driving the vehicle?" "Gary. I just helped him." Holt flipped open the small notebook found in Moore's home and read aloud, "Dock B2. That night, don't go back. What did you write this for?" Moore bowed his head. "I didn't want to remember any more." Holt pressed on. The victim had fingernail scratches on the door, indicating she was alive when the vehicle was pushed into the river. "You said she fell. Why was she in the vehicle?" Moore fell silent, his hands clenched tightly. Finally he said softly, "Gary said we had to do it. He said, if they found her, we'd go to prison. I just helped push the vehicle. I didn't know she was still alive." Holt looked straight at him. "Gary died in 2012. You're the only one who can tell the truth now. Don't let it end in lies one more time." Moore trembled, looked up at the camera, his eyes bloodshot. "I didn't want to kill her. But yes, I was there. We pushed the vehicle." The interrogation ended near midnight. The report noted, Kevin Moore admitted to being present at the barge dock on the night of February 10, 1996. Admitted with his brother Gary handling the scene, pushing the vehicle into the river. Claimed the victim died from falling during the scuffle. Statement contradicts geographic data and physical evidence. The next morning, Holt presented to the investigative team. Moore has admitted to the scene, but he's hiding the key part, the cause of death. She looked at the map spread on the table, blood samples, skid marks, open vehicle door, scratches, all indicating Marty Evans was alive when the vehicle was pushed into the water. Outside, spring rain fell lightly. Holt stood by the window looking out at the distant gray Missouri River. The water still flowed slowly, as it had 30 years ago, but now it could no longer hold its secrets. Holt knew the case wasn't over. There was still truth lying between the false confession and the silent evidence waiting to speak. After the interrogation, Detective Karen Holt, knew Kevin Moore's statement still had many inconsistencies. The accident story sounded plausible, but the field details didn't match. She decided to proceed with the most crucial step, verifying all scientific evidence and environmental data to determine what really happened on the night of February 10, 1996. Starting with hydrology, Holt contacted the Missouri Water Data Center to retrieve water levels for the Salt River and Bear Creek on the night of the crime. According to Moore, the water rose high, the vehicle slid into the river, but official data showed that from 10 p.m. to midnight that night, the water level was unusually low, only 1.8 meters, not enough to sweep away a nearly 1.5-ton pickup truck. The water only rose significantly after 3 a.m., hours after Moore's stated time. The report clearly stated, no sudden water rise occurred at the B2 dock area on the night of February 10, 1996. This completely ruled out the accident possibility. Holt concluded, the Ford Ranger must have been towed or pushed into the river intentionally. She reviewed the salvage photos and noticed long, parallel, even metal scratches on the rear bumper, as if cinched by steel cable. Holt immediately compared this sample to the 5/8-inch industrial winch cable seized at the Quincy barge yard, where Kevin Moore had worked. The results matched perfectly. Forensics confirmed, the grooves on the rear bumper matched the twist structure of barge yard cable. The vehicle was towed using industrial equipment. To bolster the hypothesis, Holt and the technical team simulated the scene using HydroMap 3D software. The results showed, if the vehicle was parked 2.4 meters from the edge, as claimed, only a 1.5-ton capacity cargo winch pull would suffice to drag it into the river. The groove direction on the model also matched the real vehicle's tow marks. That afternoon, Holt and the team returned to Dock B2. Amid the cracked concrete foundation, she spotted an old steel mooring post still bearing a rusted semicircular cut, fitting the cable diameter exactly. As she touched the rust layer, Holt thought to herself, this is where it all began. With the mechanical evidence, she continued verifying personnel records. Holt went to the Illinois State Labor Archives, where the 1996 Quincy Barge and Company timesheets were stored. On the old microfilm, the entry was clear. Shift 2, Kevin Moore, 18 o'clock, 0 o'clock. Gary Moore, 18 o'clock, 0 o'clock. Work area, B2. Right below that line was a faint note, finished early, winch equipment maintenance. Both brothers were right there, right on time. Holt submitted the report to her superiors, combining three elements, hydrology, mechanics, personnel, all proving the incident could not have been an accident. She noted in her notebook, water level on night of 2/10 low, vehicle couldn't drift on its own. Steel cable marks on rear bumper match B2 winch type. Kevin and Gary Moore's shift matches the time. When presenting to the prosecutor, Holt said no doubt anymore. Marty Evans' vehicle was towed into the river intentionally. This is concealment of a crime. The Greene County prosecutor immediately considered reclassifying the charge. By March 28, 2024, the official document was issued. Based on physical evidence and scientific data, the Marty Evans case is classified as homicide, intentional murder. That same day, Holt convened an expanded investigative team to re-review Moore's statement. He said Marty fell and was swept away by the water, but the data proved the opposite. She was knocked unconscious, stuffed into the vehicle, then towed, both her and the vehicle, into the water. The fingernail scratches on the passenger door were the final evidence, confirming the victim was alive when the vehicle sank. In the conclusion report, Holt wrote, there was no randomness that night. Kevin Moore used the barge yard's industrial equipment to dispose of the victim. Gary Moore was present, but accomplice liability, undetermined due to death. The final meeting at Greene County took place in silence. On the screen, the crime scene photo displayed, the rusted vehicle tilted in the riverbed, steel cables still wrapped around the undercarriage. Holt spoke slowly, "We lost nearly 30 years to hear the truth the river had kept." As she left the meeting room, she stood looking at the Bear Creek area map, where Marty had driven off that night, where her life ended. The story Kevin Moore tried to hide in the water's shadow was now clear: an intentional murder staged as an accident, and covered by nearly 3 decades of time. The next day, Holt returned to Barge Dock B2, where the wind whistling through the rusted winch frame sounded like sighs from the past. She knew from now on, no one would call this the disappearance anymore, but the 1996 Missouri River murder, where justice finally surfaced with the water. After the case was reclassified as first-degree murder, Detective Karen Holt didn't stop. Although Kevin Moore had admitted to being at the scene, Holt believed someone else was behind him. The only reason 2 barge yard workers would risk covering up the crime had to stem from a stronger motive: money or orders. Reviewing financial records, Holt discovered that on February 14, 1996, just 4 days after Marty Evans disappeared, Kevin deposited $2,500 in cash into his bank account, an amount far exceeding his usual monthly income. Before that, his account was nearly empty. Upon cross-checking, Holt found that Jack Reynolds, Martha's ex-husband, had withdrawn $3,000 in cash from his personal account just 2 days prior. The withdrawal and deposit matched suspiciously. Reynolds had been preliminarily investigated in 1996 over custody disputes with Marty, but was cleared due to weak alibi evidence. Now, with new data, Holt immediately requested a search warrant for Jack Reynolds' home in Hannibal. On March 31, 2024, police conducted the search. Reynolds appeared calm, but his eyes were wary as Holt read the warrant. In the garage, the forensics team found a coil of 5 8-inch steel cable, matching the type and structure of the winch cable used to tow the victim's Ford Ranger. When questioned, Reynolds said it was leftover material from an old barge yard project. In the study, Holt discovered an old document envelope containing a cash receipt dated February 14, 1996, signed K. Moore. At the bottom of the envelope was a small handwritten note: "Clean up the site, leave nothing behind." The line stunned Holt. Additionally, in the basement, the search team found a wooden box containing a woman's ring and a piece of black lace fabric, not from the Evans case, but matching a description in an unsolved 1994 disappearance. This trace opened another investigative lead, suggesting Reynolds may have been involved in multiple cases. When interrogated, Jack Reynolds denied any involvement in Martha's death. "I divorced her in 1994. I know nothing about that." Holt placed the money envelope in front of him. "Then why did you sign the receipt for Kevin Moore right after Marty disappeared?" Reynolds replied curtly, "I hired him to clean up construction debris, paid in cash, that's all." "Which construction site?" "Barge yard. I had a contract for material cleanup." Holt was silent, then showed a photo of the industrial cable coil found in the garage. "This from the barge yard too?" Reynolds frowned. "I don't remember, it's been decades." The appraisal report showed fingerprints on the receipt matching Kevin Moore, but no DNA or traces of Reynolds in Marty's vehicle. The prosecutor's office concluded the circumstantial evidence wasn't enough to charge Reynolds as the hired killer. Nevertheless, Holt noted clearly in the file, "Cash withdrawal by Reynolds matches time of Kevin's deposit. Cable in Reynolds' garage matches type used to tow victim's vehicle. Receipt with Kevin Moore's signature confirms transaction. No direct biological evidence linking." The Greene County Prosecutor's Office issued a statement: "Insufficient evidence to prosecute Jack Reynolds in the Marty Evans case. Continue monitoring, review connection to 1994 case." When confronted with Kevin, he admitted to taking a debris cleanup job, paid in cash by Reynolds, but insisted no one hired for murder. The statement bolstered the hypothesis Reynolds may have used Moore to clean up or conceal evidence, but the murder was committed by Moore himself. On April 5, 2024, The investigation file temporarily concluded. Kevin Moore is the direct perpetrator in the Marty Evans case. Insufficient basis to charge Jack Reynolds, but financial connection between the two is noted. That evening, Holt sat alone in her office, looking at the investigation board plastered with notes. Under Kevin Moore's name, she drew a red arrow to Jack Reynolds and wrote small possible indirect accomplice, continue monitoring. She knew the case might close legally, but part of the truth remained unrevealed. Jack Reynolds may not have directly caused his ex-wife's death, but he paid money, stayed silent, and let a crime happen. Outside, spring rain fell lightly on the headquarters roof again. Holt looked at the photo of Marty Evans pinned to the board, the young woman's gentle smile, as if still somewhere in the gray waters of the Salt River. Though not all could be charged, Holt understood that justice had at least been stirred, and Kevin Moore, who thought he'd buried the past for 3 decades, would finally pay for the hands that towed the vehicle into the river that winter night in 1996. After Kevin Moore was indicted and Jack Reynolds was listed as an indirect contact, Detective Karen Holt still hadn't allowed herself to close the file. The case wouldn't truly be complete until Marty Evans's body was found and confirmed. She believed that the Salt River, where the Ford Ranger had been pulled down, still held the rest of the story. On April 10, 2024, Holt coordinated with the Missouri State Water Patrol to bring the dive team back to the Bear Creek Bridge, Salt River area, where the vehicle had once been salvaged. This time, they used next-generation multi-frequency sonar, along with metal detection equipment, under the mud to scan the riverbed around the old coordinates. Spring waters had risen, the current was gentler, creating favorable conditions for the search. In the first 2 days, the team only recovered shards of broken glass and vehicle shell fragments. But on the 3rd day, as a diver scanned an area, about 40 meters from the salvage point, the metal probe detected an anomaly. Beneath nearly 2 meters of mud, they discovered a small reflective object. As they hand-dug around it, they pulled up a round gold earring with a floral pattern engraved on the face. Holt recognized it immediately. According to the 1996 file description, Marty Evans had worn this pair of earrings the night of the wedding party. The area was immediately cordoned off. The dive team expanded the search radius around the earring discovery point. After more than an hour, in a layer of mud mixed with tree roots, they found a small bone fragment, followed by a portion of a pelvis. On-site forensics confirmed it was human bone, in a state of natural decomposition over a long period. A chilling silence spread through the team. Holt stood on the boat, gazing at the dark water's surface, understanding that they had found what Marty's family had waited for over 28 years. The bone fragments were sealed in specialized containers and transported directly to the Jefferson City Identification Center. The analysis process took nearly 2 weeks. Due to the bones having been submerged in water for years, nuclear DNA was degraded, so the forensics team used mtDNA, mitochondrial DNA technique, a special method to trace genetic markers through the maternal line. Holt contacted Linda Carter, Martha's sister, to request a hair sample for comparison. On April 25, the identification results were delivered to Holt's desk. On the report, in bold print, mtDNA results. Complete match with reference sample from Linda Carter, full sister. Identity confirmed. Marty E. Evans. The office fell deathly silent. Holt sat staring at those words for a long time. For nearly 30 years, that woman had only been mentioned as missing. Now she had returned, living proof of an entire chain of crimes that had been buried. The remaining skull bone fragments were transferred to the Criminal Forensics Department to determine the cause of death. The expert report noted a 7 centimeters fracture in the occipital region, with signs of severe impact prior to death. No evidence of gunshot or stab wounds. Combined with water in the lungs and remaining soft tissue, the expert concluded, cause of death, drowning following head trauma. The victim may have been alive when pushed into the river. As Holt read that sentence, Her throat tightened. She remembered the nail scratches on the passenger door of the vehicle, evidence that Marty had fought to the last moment. It all fit the scenario: knocked unconscious, then submerged with the car to dispose of the body. On April 27th, Holt personally went to Hannibal to inform the Evans family. Linda Carter, the sister who had waited half her life, sat silently in the small kitchen, tears streaming down as Holt placed the envelope containing the identification results on the table. Inside was also the gold earring, cleaned and preserved. Linda touched it tremblingly, whispering, "She always wore this pair. Now I can bring my sister home." That evening, in the office, Holt completed the final report: relics, gold earring, confirmed to belong to the victim. Human remains, mtDNA analysis, matches family member. Identity confirmed as Marty Evans. Cause of death, drowning following head trauma. Investigation conclusion: victim was assaulted and pushed into the river while still alive. Premeditated murder. The report was forwarded to the Greene County Prosecutor's Office, along with a request to officially confirm the victim's file status. On April 28, 2024, the prosecutor's office issued a statement: based on forensic identification results, the Marty Evans case is determined to have a confirmed victim. Victim file hash 960210E updated status. Holmes did. Confirmed victim. Holt stood by the office window as night fell. Outside, light rain fell on the pavement, just like the night Marty disappeared nearly 30 years ago. But this time, everything was different. The forgotten woman had finally been found, and justice now had a name, a face, and evidence to affirm that she had truly existed. As she left the office, Holt paused by the investigation board. Under Marty Evans' photo, she added a small line: recovered, April 2024. She's finally home. After Marty Evans' body was confirmed, Greene County Prosecutor Paul Anderson formally charged Kevin Moore with first-degree murder. News of the case was splashed across Missouri with headlines: Missouri cold case solved after 28 years. The case rocked the town of Hannibal once again. The trial took place on June 10, 2024, at the Marion County Courthouse. Hundreds of residents and reporters were present. In the front row, Detective Karen Holt sat beside Linda Carter, the victim's sister. When Kevin Moore appeared in an orange prison jumpsuit, his face gaunt, hair completely white, eyes vacant, a heavy atmosphere enveloped the courtroom. Prosecutor Anderson opened on the night of February 10, 1996. Defendant Kevin Moore assaulted Marty Evans at Barge Dock B2, causing head trauma and towing the Ford Ranger into the river while she was still alive. He presented the evidence step by step. Victim's DNA and male DNA match Kevin Moore's sample. Industrial cable matches the tow marks on the vehicle. Mud sample containing manganese slag residue confirms the vehicle was at Area B2. Witness Mike Halper saw two people dragging something heavy near evidence from Moore's home: folding knife with blood stains, burned carpet fragment, note Dock B2, don't go back. Crime scene images: the rusted vehicle, ME, bracelet, gold earring, were projected on a large screen. The courtroom fell silent, Linda Carter collapsing in sobs. The defense tried to argue it was an accident, but the forensics expert affirmed the victim died from drowning, following head trauma, proving she was alive when the vehicle was pushed in. Detective Holt was called as a witness. She recounted the journey of reopening the case from the old sonar photo, mitochondrial DNA sample, to the moment the victim's bones were found. When the prosecutor asked what drove her to pursue the case for 2 years, Holt replied, "Because she was never brought home. I just wanted to give a name back to the forgotten woman." It was Moore's turn to speak. He stood, voice hoarse and trembling. "I didn't mean to kill her. I hit her because she argued with Gary. Her head hit the steel. Gary panicked, said we had to hide the body. We towed the car into the river. I stayed silent for 30 years. Then he paused, adding, "But there are 2 others, down in that river. She wasn't the only one." The lawyer immediately requested a recess. The statement stunned Holt. She jotted quickly in her notebook, 2 more. 4 days later, the jury announced, Kevin Moore is guilty of first-degree murder, sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. Holt sat silently as the verdict was read, but Moore's final glance, weary yet as if he wanted to say something, haunted her. 2 weeks later, on the morning of June 24, 2024, Jefferson City Correctional Center reported, Kevin Moore had hanged himself in his cell. No suicide note, just a crumpled scrap of paper in his pocket shirt, written in pencil, the river couldn't hold them all. There are 2 others down there. The news spread across the state. Holt went to the prison, reviewed the surveillance footage. Moore woke at 1:48 a.m., wrote something, and no one entered the cell after that. His death closed one case, but opened a new mystery. The next day, Holt sent an urgent report to Greene County. Potential additional victims in the Quincy River area. Recommend expanded search. The Missouri State Water Patrol immediately deployed sonar scans along the downstream river. On June 30th, they detected 2 metal signals over a mile apart. Upon salvage, they were 2 old car frames, a green sedan, and a small pickup truck, both heavily rusted. In the sedan, forensics found a floral dress fabric scrap and a human wrist bone. Preliminary results showed the sedan matched the vehicle in the Sarah D. disappearance, 1994, while the truck's VIN corresponded to Janet M. 1998. Both had worked around the Quincy barge yard. On July 5, 2024, Greene County issued a press release. Based on Kevin Moore's final statement and search results, the missing persons files for Sarah D. 1994, and Janet M. 1998, are reopened for investigation. Holt stood silently as she read the bulletin, knowing the Evans case was just the tip of a years-long chain of crimes. At the wrap-up meeting, Prosecutor Anderson said, "The Evans case is closed, but justice doesn't stop. There are other souls under that river." Holt nodded. That evening she returned to Bear Creek Bridge, where it all began. The night wind carried cold mist, reflecting the faint moonlight on the river's surface. She looked down at the still waters, whispering softly, "Marty has been found. But the others, I won't stop." Under the moonlight, the bridge cast its shadow quietly like a witness to that promise, that justice, though late, would never sink with the Missouri River. On July 20, 2024, the Greene County Police Department held a press conference announcing the closure of the Marty Evans case after nearly 3 decades. At the podium, Detective Karen Holt stood with Prosecutor Paul Anderson and a representative from the Missouri State Water Patrol. Behind them was a large board printed with "Justice after 28 years. The river finally spoke." Before dozens of reporters, Holt read slowly, "The 1996 Marty Evans case has been resolved. Defendant Kevin Moore was convicted of first-degree murder. The victim's remains have been found and buried per the family's wishes. We are officially closing the file." The room fell pin-drop silent for a few seconds, then erupted in applause. In the front row, Linda Carter, the victim's sister, bowed her head in tears. For her it wasn't just justice, it was release. Immediately after, Missouri media outlets covered it en masse. The front-page headline of the Missouri Post read, "28 years later, cold case solved by DNA and sonar. Justice surfaces from the depths of Salt River." The story aired on national TV, praising Holt and the investigative team's use of mitochondrial DNA and 3D sonar to crack the case. The town of Hannibal, where the disappearance had once shocked the community, decided to erect a memorial plaque for Marty Evans by Bear Creek Bridge, where the Ford Ranger was found. On the dedication day, hundreds of residents, police, and reporters gathered. The plaque was engraved, "Marty Evans, 1969-1996, lost but not forgotten. The truth never sinks with the river." Linda Carter placed a bouquet of white daisies, while Detective Holt stood behind, silently watching the flowing water. In that moment, she understood that 2 years of persistence had brought the forgotten woman home. The case quickly became a model for modern cold case investigations. Police academies incorporated it into curricula, emphasizing the power of sonar technology, DNA, and digital data. Many newspapers likened Holt to the one who made the river speak. In September 2024, the Missouri governor signed an executive order establishing the multi-county cold case task force, comprising investigators from 4 counties: Greene, Marion, Pike, and Lewis. Karen Holt was invited to serve as chief advisor. Goal: review over 200 unsolved disappearances, especially those near rivers and old industrial areas. At the unit's launch, Holt's brief statement was quoted everywhere. "No case is truly cold, only truths yet to be found. Justice may come late, but it never fades." That quote became the new unit's motto, engraved right at the front of the state police headquarters. Meanwhile, the 2 disappearances uncovered after Kevin Moore's final confession, Sarah D. 1994 and Janet M. 1998, were re-investigated. Forensics confirmed one of the river-recovered vehicles matched the Sarah D. case. Residents in the area were stunned, but instead of fear, they felt gratitude as the truth gradually emerged. In Hannibal, schools and churches held memorials. At Hannibal High School, teachers recounted the case as a lesson in perseverance and faith in justice. The town, once shrouded in silence, became a symbol of hope and renewal. At the end of October, a small bronze statue of Marty Evans was placed beside the memorial plaque. The statue depicted a young woman standing by the river, holding a bouquet of flowers, eyes gazing toward the horizon. At the statue's base was the inscription, "She waited 28 years to be found." That afternoon, Holt returned to Bear Creek Bridge. No more sonar lights or rescue vehicles, just the wind's whisper and the gentle river flow. She placed a small sprig of lavender on the memorial, the flower Marty once loved, then whispered softly, "You're home now, Martha, but we'll keep searching for the others." As she left, Holt received a call from the Cold Case Task Force. A 1989 disappearance had just been assigned. She glanced in the rearview mirror, where the plaque gleamed in the afternoon sun, and smiled. The story of Marty Evans didn't just close one case, it ushered in a new era for justice in Missouri, where technology, persistence, and faith and truth revived. Voices thought forever swallowed by the river. Justice may come late, but it never fades. The lesson from the Missouri 1996 cold case, Solved, Arrest Shocks Community, isn't just a triumph of technology, but a practical guide for life in the U.S. today. From the forgotten black and white sonar photo of 1996, the blood-stained gray carpet scrap in the Ford Ranger, the Quincy Barge and Company, key, to the mtDNA, extracted from bones found near Bear Creek Bridge, Detective Karen Holt showed that preserving data and sticking to procedure is the key to unlocking justice's door. So, on a personal level, when heading to a party or meeting an acquaintance like Marty, planning to stop at Hannibal Walmart, share your real-time location, text your route ahead, schedule hourly check-ins, choose well-lit crowded meetup spots, equip your car with a dash cam, your home with a doorbell camera. Silent witnesses if trouble strikes. At the community level, Mike Halper's seemingly minor tip about 2 people dragging something heavy near the bridge saved the case after 28 years. Spot something odd at an industrial lot, barge yard or riverbank, call 911 or submit an anonymous tip. Don't brush it off as probably just an accident. For local law enforcement, the case reminds us to digitize old files, cross-reference hydrology, match mechanical traces, cable marks on the rear bumper, and use 3D sonar, mtDNA as investigation standards. Inter-county collaboration, like the Cold Case Task Force, breaks down jurisdictional barriers. And for media's community, the Bear Creek Bridge Memorial reminds us victims aren't just files. Report responsibly, respect families, support violence survivors, via the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 799. Safe. Join Neighborhood Watch. Justice may come late, but it needs to be seeded from safety habits, a reporting spirit, and investigative infrastructure that learns from the past. Thank you for following the journey to reclaim the truth after nearly 3 decades in the Marty Evans case. Proof that justice may come late, but never fades. Subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to join us in exploring more cold cases, where the past still holds secrets waiting to be uncovered.